Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be doing a tutorial on setting up ArtSoft Mach3 CNC software for a 3040 Chinese-made import CNC that I use. This should also work for a 6040 and a 6090 CNC as well. It should work on all of the brands. I don't think it's going to be any exception to that, as long as it uses lead screws and linear rails. I think it should work. One of those heavy-duty cream-colored machines that weigh a ton is what I'm talking about. If you have one of those machines that has a different rail system and is belt-driven, I don't know if all these settings are going to work under Mach 3, but I know that this works for my machine, which is a 3040, and it should work on just about anything else that is similar to mine. All right, let's get into it. And of course, the first part of installation is just installing the software itself. You can install it to the default directory, or if you have a custom directory that you want to use, that's fine. But you want to leave pretty much everything else after that first choice. You'll just want to leave everything how it is and install the program. All right, so now that you've installed the software, you're going to want to go to Mach3 Mill, open up that program. Icon will be on your desktop. Once you've got it opened up, you're going to want to go to the config, which is up in the top next to file. And you're going to want to select native units. You're going to want to select millimeters and not inches. If you select inches, you're going to have some serious problems with how far your machine moves every time you run G-code. It's not going to work, so make sure you have it set up in millimeters. All right, next step is ports and pins. Back up to config, you'll select that. So from here, you're just going to want to make sure that your settings are correct. Your ports are enabled. You want the first one to be 0378. Port 2 should be 0278. And your kernel speed is going to need to be 25,000 hertz. If you don't have those set properly, it's not going to be able to communicate with your machine, and it's just not going to work. If you have the kernel speed set wrong for the machine, it will run too slowly or too quickly, and you can mess up some of your projects. At least that's what I think will happen. I'm not 100% sure. I've never actually messed with that. Next step is going to be motor output settings. All right, back up to config. Back over to ports and pins, and then over to motor outputs tab. Then you want to make sure that X, Y, and Z axis are enabled. They've got the little green icon and not the red X beside them. And if you want to use the fourth axis, if you plan on using that, or if you've already got that, a lot of machines come with it, go ahead and click A axis, enable that. Then for your step pins, you're going to want to have it set at 2, 4, 6, and 8 for your X, Y, Z, and A axis. And then your dir pins, you want those set to 3, 5, 7, and 9, just like I've got on screen. Next setting is dir low active. You only need to change any of those settings if one of your X, Y, Z, or A axis is moving in the wrong direction when you're running your G code. So the first time you run your machine, you want to make sure all of the X, Y, Z axis are running the proper direction. And if that's the case, then you don't have to change any of this. Then go to step low active and enable those for the X, Y, and Z axis. You don't have to enable it for the A axis. And then next you want to make sure the step ports are set to 1, 1, 1, and 1. And then the dir ports are set to 1, 1, 1 as well. If any of those aren't set to 1, then go ahead and change that number. If it's at 0 or 2 or something, then just go ahead and switch that now. This step is very important. You want to make sure that you've got everything selected just like I have it in the video here. If it's not set up this way, it might not work. Well, it probably won't work. Then you want to hit apply, and let's go to the next step. All right, go to Config, Ports and Pins, and now we're going to go to the Input Signals tab, and we are going to be setting up emergency stops and all of that at this point. All right, once you're there, you're going to want to scroll down and find where it says eStop, and you're going to want to enable that. And then next, you're going to want to make sure it's set to port 1, and pin number is set to 10, and then you're going to want to set it active low. You want to click on that as well. Once you've checked out everything, make sure it's set properly. Click apply and then OK. The next step is to set up limit switch settings. That's going to be in config, ports and pins, and then input signals, and that's where this is going to be located at. All right, and under this you're going to see X++ tab, X minus tab, Y++ tab, Y minus tab, Z++, Z minus. You'll also notice you've got X home, Y home, and Z home. You don't need to activate those. You'll just want to do X++, X minus, so on and so forth for the rest of them. You don't have to worry about changing the A axis because it is a rotating axis. It doesn't have any limits on how much it can rotate. It just rotates freely. Well, not freely, but you know what I'm saying. Then you want to make sure that all the ports are set to 1. All right, next you're wanting to set the pin numbers for the X, Y, and Z axis. X needs to be set to 11 for both the plus and minus settings. Y needs to be set to 12. Z needs to be set to 13. And then you need to activate the active low for all of them. You don't have to worry about activating the home setting. Just X, Y, Z axis for both the plus and minus configuration. Just click on those so it shows the green check mark, and we can proceed to the next. And just remember, you have to have everything set exactly like I have it set on screen, or your machine's not going to work right. So hit apply and OK if everything is set correctly. Next is output signal config. All right, so go back to config, ports and pins, and this time we're going to go to the output signals tab. We're going to be adjusting those settings if they're not at default. All right, you just need to enable 1, enable 2, enable 3, enable 4, and enable 5. You don't need to worry about 6. And then you need to click on output number 1 and enable that. And then for your port number, you need to make sure that they are all set to 1. And then pin number, which is the next tab over, you need to set all of them to 14. So if any of those aren't set to 1, the port number isn't set to 1, set it to 1. And the pin number, if it's not set to 14, go ahead and switch it to 14. Sorry, let me correct myself. Output is 16. You want to set that to 16. And then on active low, you just need to enable 1, 2, and 3. And then also output number 1. And then just double check everything and make sure it's set up like it is on screen. And then click apply and OK. And we're going to move on to the next step. The next step is for stepper motor settings. Very important. So you want to go to config and go down to motor turning. So we're in a different tab there, and it'll pull up a different screen. All right, so your motor movement profiles are going to be exactly the same for your X, Y, and Z axis. So it's going to be easy to set this up. It's only different for the A axis. Obviously, it moves a little bit differently. So your step per is going to be 400. Your velocity is going to be set to 2,000, and your acceleration is going to be 300, and then your step pulse is 5, and dir pulse is also 5, and that's going to be the same for all three X, Y, and Z axes. So you want to go ahead and set those up all the same. And before you move on to the next axis, you want to make sure you save axis settings and then move on to the next axis and set them all up exactly the same. If your CNC is not working once we get done with this, there is another tutorial that I'm going to be doing on how to calibrate the stepper motors to make sure they're moving the proper distance. Once again, I'll cover that in a different tutorial. The A-axis, however, is very, very different. Steps per is going to be 13.3333. Velocity is going to be set to 700. Acceleration is going to be set to 100. Step pulse is just 1, and dir pulse is also just 1. And you want to save settings. And that's only on A axis if you're planning on using that axis. All right, that's it for the Mach 3 settings. You should be set and ready to go. You'll want to restart your machine and fire up some G-code and have some fun.